Paris in the 400 flat final. Solid core of a good team.
Josiah Paris on the opening leg. Trinidad and Tobago.
World senior champions in 2017 in London.
The Bahamas.
Shamar Smith and Andrews in the 400 final.
And St. Kitts and Nevis on the inside. So Shamar Palmer leading off for the Jamaicans. For Trinidad and Tobago, they will have the 400 hurdler Ronaldo Moore on the opening leg. Josiah Paris on the first leg for the Barbadians.
And Barbados will have Aaron Spencer, that long jump, triple jumper, on the second leg.
Has a CARIFTA under 17 hurdles medal, so versatile, going to Baylor University when he leaves high school.
Set.
Final race of the 49th CARIFTA Games, the under 20 boys 4x400 final. St. Kitts and Nevis, Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Jamaica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Shamar Palmer has gone out well for the Jamaicans. Paris of Barbados trying to keep pace. So too Ronaldo Moore of Trinidad and Tobago. St. Vincent and the Grenadines have gone well on the opening leg as well. The Bahamians coming forward. Palmer leads for Jamaica. Three teams tightly bunched behind him, but the Jamaicans take a comfortable lead at the first leg ahead of Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados.
Great lead-off leg by Palmer, accelerated down the straightaway, made the pass when he was flying at top speed.
Russian Clark on the second leg for Jamaica, the 400 hurdles champion. Eases ahead of the Trinidadians. Barbados in third. St. Vincent and the Grenadines in fourth. The Bahamians well back in fifth position. Russian Clark pouring it on for the Jamaicans. He transitions down the stretch with a 10-meter advantage. Trinidad and Tobago trying to close down the stretch. Barbados back in third position. St. Vincent and the Grenadines in fourth. The change is made. The Jamaican lead narrowed.
Clark, second leg solid. Level, the 200 champion, sauntering around the bottom curve, has to press some gas. Trinidad and Tobago gone past him.
Level put under pressure. The Trinidadians now with the advantage. Barbados right there as well. Trinidad and Tobago ahead of Jamaica. Barbados in third. Is that where the medals will go? Brian Level eases ahead for the Jamaicans. Oh, look at that. Here's the final change. Delano Kennedy has the baton.
47.8 for Level, Jamaica in the lead now.
Far from over. This is a terrific 4x4 race. The Trinidadians putting the Jamaicans under pressure, trying to deny the home team a clean sweep of the relays.
You called it, Hubert. You said it was going to be close, and it's coming down to the wire 150 meters to go now.
Looks like Cyril Sumner on the anchor leg for Trinidad and Tobago. Delano Kennedy for Jamaica. Sumner of Trinidad and Tobago on the outside. Kennedy of Jamaica on the inside. The Jamaican finds the extra gear needed and opens up 3, 4, 5, 6 meters. Jamaica wins the 4x4 for under 20 boys. Sweeps the 8 relays at the CARIFTA Games in 2022 and bring the curtain down on CARIFTA 49 in sensational fashion. Easily the best race of the relays, but the Jamaicans not to be denied. Trinidad and Tobago gave it all they had. They were brilliant as well, but in the final analysis, it's the black, green and gold that reigns supreme at 3:08.94.
Kennedy had to step down the stretch to shake off the TNT team. 3:09.67 for second. 46.8 for the 400 champion.
The final event of the 2022 CARIFTA Games delivered exactly the kind of drama expected from a championship-ending 4x400-meter relay. The under-20 boys final was not simply another race on the program. It was the last opportunity for Jamaica to complete a remarkable clean sweep of all 8 relay titles at the championships, and that added enormous pressure to every athlete on the track. Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, the Bahamas, and St. Kitts and Nevis all had the same objective: prevent Jamaica from finishing the games with a perfect relay record. On paper, Jamaica entered as the favorite, but the 4x400 is rarely decided by the fastest individual athletes alone. 4 separate 400-meter performances must be connected through exchanges, pacing, positioning, and decision-making. A single mistake in any of those areas can destroy an entire race. Jamaica ultimately won because its athletes handled those details better when the pressure reached its highest point. Shamar Palmer took responsibility for the opening leg, and his start immediately established Jamaica as the team to beat. Palmer attacked the first 200 meters with confidence, but the important detail was that he did not completely sacrifice his second half for an early advantage. In the 400 meters, an overly aggressive opening 200 can produce a severe slowdown over the final straight. Palmer instead maintained enough control to preserve his speed deep into the lap. That allowed Jamaica to enter the first exchange in a strong position. Barbados remained competitive through Josiah Paris, while Trinidad and Tobago and St. Vincent and the Grenadines also stayed close enough to keep the race open. The gaps were still relatively small, which meant that Jamaica could not afford a careless second leg. Rushing Clark received the baton and immediately changed the rhythm of the race. Clark was not simply trying to maintain the lead, he was trying to create separation. His background as an under 2,400-meter hurdler was particularly valuable because hurdling requires athletes to maintain rhythm while controlling their stride pattern and fatigue. In a relay, that same ability to remain technically organized under pressure can become a major advantage. Clark produced one of Jamaica's most important legs of the race. His running appeared controlled rather than frantic, but the gap continued to grow. By the middle stages of his lap, Jamaica had created a significant advantage over the chasing teams. At one point, the lead approached 10 meters, giving Jamaica what looked like a comfortable position. However, the 4x400 is a race where a 10-meter lead can disappear extremely quickly. Trinidad and Tobago refused to allow the race to become a procession. Their second leg began reducing the Jamaican advantage, while Barbados continued to remain within striking distance. This was important because Jamaica's early dominance had created the impression that the final might be decided long before the anchor leg. Instead, Trinidad and Tobago's resistance changed the entire tactical situation. The third leg became the turning point. Brian Level took the baton for Jamaica, with the pressure increasing rapidly. Trinidad and Tobago launched one of their strongest attacks of the race and managed to move ahead. For Jamaica, this was the most dangerous moment of the final. The team had spent much of the race controlling the competition, but suddenly its position was threatened. The way Lavelle responded was more important than the fact that he temporarily lost the lead. A less experienced runner might have reacted immediately by trying to regain the position with an uncontrolled acceleration. That approach could easily produce the opposite result: excessive energy expenditure, poor mechanics, and a major slowdown during the final 100 meters. Level instead stayed composed. He continued running his own race, gradually reducing the deficit rather than attempting to eliminate it in one desperate move. That patience was crucial. As the third leg progressed, Lavelle began closing the gap. His mechanics remained stable even as fatigue increased, and he waited until the final portion of the lap to make his decisive move. Approaching the exchange zone, Jamaica had recovered the lead. That moment effectively saved Jamaica's championship sweep. The final exchange put Delano Kennedy in position to determine the outcome. But Kennedy did not receive the baton with a comfortable lead. Trinidad and Tobago's anchor remained close, meaning Jamaica still had to run a complete 400 meters under maximum pressure. The first part of Kennedy's lap was therefore about control rather than immediate separation. He had to protect his position while avoiding the temptation to run the first 200 meters too aggressively. In a 4x400, The anchor leg is psychologically different from an individual 400. The runner knows exactly where the nearest opponent is, and every sound from the crowd can increase the pressure. Trinidad and Tobago continued to attack. Through the backstretch, the gap remained small enough to create genuine uncertainty. Jamaica could not relax, and Kennedy could not afford to waste energy looking back repeatedly. His task was to maintain rhythm, concentrate on his own mechanics, and wait for the correct moment to accelerate. That moment arrived on the final bend and into the last 120 meters. Kennedy increased his turnover and began separating from the Trinidad and Tobago runner. The key was not simply that he accelerated, but that he was still capable of producing that acceleration after 3 previous legs had already placed enormous demands on Jamaica's body and nervous system. His posture remained controlled, his stride stayed efficient, and the gap finally began expanding with every step. The race changed almost instantly. For most of the anchor leg, Trinidad and Tobago had looked capable of challenging for gold. In the final straight, however, Jamaica demonstrated the difference between staying in contention and actually finishing the job. Kennedy delivered when the pressure was at its maximum and crossed the line in 3:08.94. Trinidad and Tobago finished second in 3:09.67, only 0.73 seconds behind Jamaica. That margin is important because it shows how competitive the final actually was. Jamaica won decisively at the finish, but the race itself was anything but easy. Trinidad and Tobago forced Jamaica to fight through every stage and remain close enough to create real danger deep into the final lap. Barbados took bronze, completing a strong performance from a team that remained competitive throughout the race. Their presence also underlined the depth of Caribbean sprinting. This was not a final dominated by 2 isolated teams. Multiple nations were capable of producing competitive 400-meter athletes, and that depth made the tactical battle far more complicated. From an analytical perspective, Jamaica's victory can be divided into 4 major advantages. The first was pacing. Palmer and Clark did not simply sprint the first half of their legs and hope to survive. They managed their energy while still creating pressure on the opposition. The second was race control. When Trinidad and Tobago attacked, Jamaica did not panic. Level's response on the third leg was particularly important because he resisted the psychological pressure to immediately chase the lead at any cost. The third was technical execution. The baton exchanges were clean and efficient. In a relay where teams can lose several tenths of a second through poor exchanges, Jamaica consistently put its next runner into position to attack. The fourth, and perhaps most important, was the anchor leg. Kennedy received the baton with the race still in doubt and produced his best work when it mattered most. His acceleration over the final 120 meters transformed a close contest into a Jamaican victory. The final time of 3:08.94 also demonstrated the quality of the performance. This was not simply a championship won because Jamaica had no serious opposition. Trinidad and Tobago ran 3:09.67, meaning Jamaica had to operate at a very high level to secure the title. There was also a larger significance to the result. Jamaica's victory completed an extraordinary sweep of all 8 relay titles at the 2022 CARIFTA Games. That achievement reflected the country's depth rather than the ability of one individual superstar. The 4x400 in particular requires a pool of athletes capable of producing strong 400-meter performances while adapting to relay tactics and championship pressure. For the young athletes involved, this type of race provides experience that cannot be replicated in training. Running a final with thousands of spectators, carrying the expectations of an entire country, watching an opponent close the gap, and then having to execute a final 100-meter acceleration teaches lessons that become valuable later in senior competition. And that is ultimately what made this race so significant. The result was Jamaica's gold medal, but the performance was a demonstration of how elite relay teams are built. Palmer established the position, Clark expanded it, Level rescued it when Trinidad and Tobago threatened to take control, and Kennedy finished the job. Each runner had a different responsibility, and each had to execute at a different stage of the race. Trinidad and Tobago deserve equal recognition for refusing to surrender. Their 3:09.67 showed that they possessed enough speed and resilience to challenge Jamaica almost all the way to the line. Barbados also demonstrated the strength of the region by remaining competitive throughout the final. The 2022 CARIFTA Games therefore ended with more than another Jamaican victory. The under-20 boys 4x400 final showed the next generation of Caribbean quarter-milers learning how to race under pressure. It demonstrated that speed alone is not enough. Championship relay success requires pacing, positioning, technical exchanges, tactical patience, psychological control, and the ability to produce one final acceleration when the body's already exhausted. Jamaica had all of those elements on the night, and when Delano Kennedy crossed the finish line in 3:08.94, the final piece of the puzzle was complete. Jamaica had swept every relay title at the 2022 CARIFTA Games, ending the championships with a performance that perfectly represented the depth, competitiveness, and extraordinary sprinting culture of Caribbean athletics.